One down.
Hello.
All right, let me call value.
It's whatever.
Back.
Get out. You really do have boomer energy sometimes. You want these stylists? They come in different colors.
Oh. How are you, Gibbs?
Oh, good.
Excited?
Yeah, I guess.
Look, we're twinning. I'm Gibbs.
Oh, wow. What are you wearing? It's blue.
Yeah, there's little
Bulbasaurs.
Bulbasauruses on them.
Nice. Very nice. Value is playing fucking Hearthstone. I need his ass to get in here.
I can fire up my stream. I gotta edit some stuff. Quick on it.
Garfield, I need you to calm down, bro.
Is Garfield feeling rambunctious? Is he living up to the orange cat meme right now?
No, he's extra chill. But he's just over here rubbing his head all over my arm. Making noise. He just wants all the attention.
Have you seen this little pop-up on Twitch? Want early access to 2K streaming? Affiliates and partners can now request access to 2K streaming beta. Beta? What do I look like?
I haven't looked at it.
Okay, bitch.
I'm submitting my thing. It's a Google sheet, which is so unorganized. It's a Google form submission. It's crazy. What is your Twitch username?
Google where it's at, bro. What are you talking about?
I'll send you the form too. We can be the first to fucking 2K streaming, bro.
I'm not doing that shit.
Okay, fuck you too. Select your stream setup. I have a single PC setup. I don't use PC. Okay, I have a single PC setup. Okay, what is broadcast OBS Studios? Of course, I'm cool. But what graphics card do I use?
There are options.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! Hold on, I can see it. It's the RTX 3 with the XXX. Yeah, that one.
What are you giggling at over there, bro?
Hello. What?
What are you giggling at?
I was laughing because Tyler was yelling and it was funny.
Tyler's always yelling. Aren't you, Tyler?
Yo!
Puto.
You guys ready for the camera reveal?
Yeah.
I'm ready for fucking combat. Let's go!
Why do you have your white belt on? No, okay. If you had any other colored belt on, I was gonna slap the shit out of you. I used to like do a lot of training, right? And like I'll never forget some of these fuckers would be like walking in with their black belts to like a new dojo, and you're like, bro, that's like mad disrespectful.
Is it?
Yes, like never do that. If you go to a new dojo, even if you're like, however many years experience, you always wear a
I
white
knocked
belt.
for shit.
You're in.
Hell yeah.
Like you're probably gonna get an ass beating if you do that. Honestly, they're like, oh, it's grappling time or striking time. Beatings.
I don't know. If I was a business owner, I'd be happy to have somebody experienced come in and do their thing.
It's because you say that, but you're wrong. You would think that, but that's not how that shit works. It's the culture, bro. The culture. And then, like, usually when people do that, they're all like trying to poach people. So like they come in and oh, I'm a big black belt. I'm way better than you. All right, Patepel's gonna fill in for Value. I don't know what Value's doing. Looks like he's playing Hearthstone. Bastard. I'm gonna have to give him a hard time.
I respect all belts of color.
That's good. Are you live yet, Cal? So we can invite you.
I'm joining right there. Feel free to get started. Sorry, I'm like.
Oh, we will get started when I deem us getting started. All right.
Yeah, I apologize. Making sure I'm on the right scene. Okay, I believe this is the right scene.
How's
Maybe
everybody,
testing.
how's everybody doing today? Living the dream.
Living the dream.
Great.
I don't
It
even-
was nice and sunny today.
You know, just sipping shit out of my DCS championship mug.
Let's go.
Your DCS championship mug?
Wait, that's not. Yeah. You said the. How dare you? I can't believe that. Is there
OTPL,
even
I'm
a
sorry.
championship mug for? I don't even know if there is a championship mug for DCS.
There is a
you
trophy
get
in the
anything
process
for
of
that?
being made right now. It's gonna be a giant trophy. It's gonna be
In the
like
process.
Yeah, I like Skiztech
So it's not
donated.
have a winner engraving or anything.
Yeah, we're gonna have the names engraved on there.
mine.
Yeah, on the
Okay.
on the actual. It's like Skiztech dropped $500 on this bitch. He's like, I want it all spent on the trophy. I was like, okay, we're gonna have the Skiztech Memorial Trophy.
It's such a funny.
I mean,
I
shit,
like
bro.
a little new
That's a
setup.
fancy one. I like Tyler. We have 2 serial killers in the house with their setups here. Blank walls. You can't trust them.
We just redid my room like completely and totally. That's
All
why I
right.
don't have
Before we
anything.
begin. All right. I know you know the rules. You know the rules, Ivory. I know Cal's new to the judge. You know how everything works. All right.
I don't know the rules.
All right. It's real simple. I'm gonna. You have 7-minute openings. Then at about the 22-minute mark, each one of y'all gets 7-minute opening. It's been 7.
Holy shit!
It's always been
I do
7.
not have 7
Has anyone
minutes
ever
of
used
anything
7
prepared.
minutes?
Yeah, both. I think
I have
honestly,
about
we've had more
20
people.
seconds.
Yeah, we've had more people run out of time than not use all of it. And then
Wow.
so after you don't have to use all 7 minutes. That's cool. So you'll have y'all's openings, and then it's gonna go to open. Y'all are gonna just argue for about another 14 minutes or so, and then it's gonna go. We're gonna have a period. I'm gonna pause y'all. The judges are gonna come ask a couple questions at that time. Then I'm gonna turn it back over to y'all, and y'all are gonna keep going. And then we're gonna do another about 20 minutes. Then the judges will come ask questions again. And then I'll turn in one more opening, and then I'll give y'all 3-minute closing at the end, and we'll be done out of here quick, fast, in a jiffy. Also, throughout the thing, I will also be moderating, and I will ask y'all both questions, and I'll probably press y'all both at some point about some bullshit y'all said that, whatever, trying to get something out of y'all, see if y'all crack, try to get everybody on either side for content and for, just to flesh out y'all's arguments. So, any questions?
Why do you look so great tonight, eh? You do something with your hair, Gibbs?
Yeah, I did. It's called washing it. I know you've never done that before. Let's go. All right, cool. Let's begin. Judges, you'll just Pentemple knows. Cal, you just wait till it's judging time to ask questions. Don't be interrupting like some people chai. We'll go from there. All right. I guess since I'm sure you have a longer opening, and this is not really an AF-neg subject, I'm gonna let you go first, Tyler, since he said he's got 20 seconds, and then you can respond. You can do your 20 seconds and then respond to all the bullshit he's bound to say. Give me 1 moment, and let me pull up my timer. That's not the right button.
Do you want judge cams off?
No, you can leave them on. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, listen.
And are you gonna start by giving us like the general premise of our conversation and everything? Of course.
Yeah, it's called an opener.
Okay.
1 second here. We're pulling it up. I gotta find the thing. I had it ready to go, and then the LA riots happened, and now I don't have nothing.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, alien symbols.
Oh, here it is. All right, cool. All right, let's do this. Tyler, whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
All right, so the debate prompt here is going to be what the Democratic Party should do moving forward. In my analysis, I say the current Democratic Party is at an impasse, depending on the issue, and the polls split down the middle, sometimes 60-40 in either direction between rational moderates such as myself and ideologically driven opposition that I'm pretty sure he's going to be advocating on the behalf of today. The problem with the ideologically driven in any group from political party to religious faction is ideological fervor ignores and isolates the masses in the center and the moderates, the majority, which by far is the largest political faction in our country, is independents who are moderate. Isolating them is political suicide, is going to be pretty much the premise of what I'm saying here today. So I have a long list of things that I had to break them down into about 3. I went with gender, soft on crime policies, and the border, because those are the ones clearly laid out in polling to show that they are extremely unpopular with the middle, and the masses. So I just want to go into polling really quickly. When you see 1% in a nationwide poll, you're looking at anywhere from 1.8 to 2.5 million voters just for 1%, depending on if you're going with likely voters versus all voters. So that 1% might seem like a tiny amount, but it's a lot. So I'm just going to do, for estimation sakes, for my numbers here, 1% is going to equal 2.2 million. It's right smack dab in the center between the likely voters and the available voters in the country. It's a good way to kind of get around making this into a giant math quiz for everybody. So let's start with my first argument, and the reason why Trump was arguably elected twice based on the exit polls is the border. And when I say the border, I'm including immigration, national security, border security, and crime of migrants. All of these things right now, Trump has a positive approval rating in the aggregate. And this is while his overall approval rating is negative 2.6 right now. So arguably he's doing significantly better. His favorability rating, or how much somebody likes him as a person, is at negative 5.8 right now. But if you compare his favorability with his immigration approval, it's a 12.1 gap, or 26.6 million people who do not like Trump's personality or did not vote for him that approve of his handling of immigration. If you start getting deeper into the numbers, you're going to see it's almost 15 to 20% of the Democratic Party. If you look into the numbers as well, you'll see it's about 3 million more than people that voted for him. So even people that didn't vote for him are approving of his border handling. Prior to the election, it was the majority of Hispanics, and there are some nuances to that we might dip into if this guy dives into polls pretty deep. But generally what I want to say on that is Hispanics are tired of being conflated with illegal immigrants. These are people that came here, did everything right, are adding positively to our country on an economic level, on a level of paying taxes, and they don't want to be lumped in with the criminal aliens. That's why the Hispanics at least say they're flipping. That, and there's some other things about them not liking Latinx and rich white people forcing their language on them, but that's side note for here. So going into the second topic, it's going to be gender theory. If we look at this, 70% of voters said this was something that impacted their vote in 2024, either largely or moderately. And this was an exit poll done, but if we look at anecdotal polls, we'll see anywhere from 60 to 78% of the nation rejects putting trans women into women's spaces. Whereas on the opposite end, you only see about 18 to 30% approval for putting trans women into women's spaces. This is extremely unpopular. At best, it's a 70-30 issue. At worst, it's an 80-20 issue. Yet you see 60% of the Democratic Party siding with this and trying to push it forward. Last, we're going to move into crime. Now, crime I'm going to sum up with Kamala Harris's term, smart on crime, which she wrote a book about, but this isn't just a Kamala Harris thing. This is leftist DAs in major cities like Larry Krasner, Chesa Boudin, Alvin Bragg, Kim Foxx, and many, many more that were pushing bail reform, policies that lined up with CRT-inspired equity practices on how to carry out the law, how law should be racially equitable. And if you look at the approval on these policies, it's about a 30% approval versus 70% against. Especially defund the police. We saw even 75% of the black community was for equal or more funding to the police, while defunding and abolishing the police was a major narrative in 2020. Now, what we saw also with the George Floyd riots of peace was a gentleman named David Shore printed in the Atlantic in 2020 going through whenever there was a left-wing riot and then its impacts on surrounding neighboring areas, showing there was a 2 to 3 point GOP bump in surrounding districts around where the riot was. So it's well parsed out. He was fired from the Atlantic for posting this because it went against the orthodoxy of the party. But it's well documented that when one party goes too deep ideologically, everyone around them shifts to the other side. My thesis here is that the Democratic Party needs to have what was called under the Clinton era a sister soldier moment, where for these 3 major issues and probably a few more, the moderates, the beer drinking Democrats, the normal people in the middle of the country and the Rust Belt stand up to these ocean cities, far left policies and say, not only are you not part of our party, but we want you out because If you look at Gallup polling, they make up about people that identify as Democrats, or Democratic socialists or communists make up about 6% of eligible voters in this country, where if you look at the center, it's closer to 40%, depending on how you measure it. So you're giving up one of the largest demographics to pander to a very small one. Moderates in the center do not like any of these issues. And for the first time in 100 years, we're seeing GOP is up in voter registration. If you look at another Gallup, that's from Patrick Ruffino's study. If you look into a Gallup poll, we see that there's a 2 to 3 point advantage when moderate voters are forced to pick a side with the GOP over the Democratic Party. And then if we look at the latest CNN poll, we see that 60% of voters in the 80s used to vote, working class voters and middle class voters used to vote for the Democratic Party. That number is pretty much split down the middle now. The average person is turned off by Democratic politics that come from the top down. This is academia pushing out what they think should be the future of the party, and this is normal people rejecting it. This is how Donald Trump won, despite the fact that his approval, or his actual personal approval rating or favorability, is significantly lower than his job approval and the amount of people that voted for him. People are holding their nose to vote for Trump because the other party is so bad. We need to cut out the rot, or we'll continue to lose support.
All right.
Can you tell whoever that was to shut the and be respectful of the debate, please?
What? What are you talking about? The background noise?
Yeah, my fiance dropped something.
Unacceptable. Very disruptive. All right, go ahead, Ivy. You're up there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a full long-winded statement prepared, but I think when it comes to, and I think I've been thinking about how, like, is it worth it to integrate, like the far lefties or just the lefties? And I think when I think about what that group entails, I think a lot about anti-monopoly. I think a lot about anti-racist and addressing systemic inequality and systemic inequity in America. And I would say that those things have progressed, at least fighting against inequity has progressed pretty rapidly and strongly in the past couple decades. And I think there's really good arguments that we need to reevaluate where we are there, and not only on racial issues, but also on gender and sexual orientation issues. So, is there a place that we might need to reevaluate where we are and reconsider the language that we use? Absolutely. However, I think there's always going to be questions about inequity, inequality, and anti-monopoly. And I mean, there's plenty of examples where really powerful companies have unfairly influenced the political system, unfairly influenced the market, and so these things, they're always going to be concerns that people have. And so what the Democrats really need right now is a really cohesive platform. They need to tell people what they're about, and people and like it needs to be coherent and it needs to be something that is actually popular in the polling. And so given the polling that we're seeing around a lot of the culture issues, it really does seem like there needs to be some kind of reevaluation on what that is. However, a platform, I think a sign of a very mature platform is one that can speak to the core concern that lefties have, which is these anti-monopoly, anti-inequity, and can actually guard against those things being encroached upon. So even if you believe that we're in a good place on one of those issues, a strong policy platform that the Democrats should adopt actually needs to be able to uphold those standards and make sure that we don't backslide.
All right, fantastic. All right, we're going to open it up, let y'all two go at it. Here in about 8 minutes or so, we will let the judges get in. Fight.
All right, so I want to go ahead and address a few of your things that I wrote down here. Change the messaging. The messaging started in, let's say, gender theory. In about 2013, this is when it broke into the mainstream, around a 2014 South Carolina bathroom bill. And when that bathroom bill was presented, Democrats had 70% of the country on their side with this argument. Their messaging was what brought people into it. We can look at the polling and see the slow decline of that over time as things expanded and got worse. Now, there's a group of the Democratic Party called the Progressives that will not concede on this. They won't just say the liberal stance of let people express themselves freely, but, maybe keep them out of women's spaces, which is the liberal, modest stance that most people would agree with. What they say is trans women are women, and if you disagree, you're a bigot. With DEI policy, that's another issue we look at with Trump's DEI policies that he's been passing in the government and going against colleges for not upholding. That has 60 to 70% approval with the country as well. That's something he ran on, something he won on, and something he's been doing. You're saying we're in a good place. Most of the country is saying we've gone way too far in the wrong direction, and we need to reel it back.
I didn't say we were in a good place on the rhetoric. I said we were I said we were in a better place. And if you think we're in a good place on like inequality and inequity, and it sounds like you think you think there isn't work to be done, or not that there isn't work to be done, but it's not a priority compared to other issues.
Yeah, I don't think systemic racism has been proven, let alone needs to have the entire country
you think
restructured.
Never existed?
Maybe, but not today. I don't care. Redlining was not a good example of it.
It wasn't?
Wait.
No.
How is redlining not a good example of systemic racism?
Because most of the people that were doing the redlining were black-owned banks looking at credit score.
No way.
Yes, it was. This has been well documented.
Okay.
Yes, I can give you the citations afterwards. Most banks that were redlining were black-owned banks in black neighborhoods.
Owned by black people. What?
Black people don't own banks?
Wait, okay, hang on. But we're talking about like the 50s, right? Like the vast majority of banks.
Redlining was happening in the 90s.
Wait, what?
Redlining, when there was fighting against it, when we passed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the policies put in place to stop redlining, was happening in the 90s. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac forced racial quotas onto banks when they were doing lending, which led to predatory loans, which led to the housing market crash.
Redlining is way older than the 90s.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair to Ivory Fool, I don't think he's talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac when he's talking about systemic racism.
I conceded that it's existed in the past. I'm talking about modern day. Like where we are now.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was trying to make sure that and that's why I'm saying if you think we're in a good place now, that's fine. I think that what we need is to make sure that the platform that we're upholding has actual consideration to not let us do worse on that.
See, this isn't about what I think. This is about the future of the Democratic Party. And looking at the polling is saying we've gone significantly too far, and people are celebrating Trump's push back against it. Firing DEI people is very unpopular. Getting rid of DEI policies is rather popular.
I don't know if polling though is always going to be accurate in terms of is there actually
if you have a better metric show it to me. But just guessing seems to me like you're just making assertions. And
no, I'm not making an assertion either way. I'm just saying you can't say that polling indicates that systemic racism is no longer a thing.
I didn't say that.
An issue.
I didn't say that. I said my personal belief is not an issue. I'm saying my personal belief does not matter to the prompt. The prompt is what the Democratic Party should do. And if you look at the polling,
your personal belief matters.
But you cited my personal belief as my reason. So the reason, though, I'm saying we should move away from it is because polling is showing that it's unpopular and that we've gone way too far in this direction. There's people in the higher ups of the Democratic Party that were calling Trump a fascist, a white supremacist, saying we're a white supremacist nation, and saying that we need to reel this back. At some point, there was a 1619 project, which was cited by almost every candidate on stage in 2020 in the Democratic primary, which was saying we are a systemically racist country at our roots, and those roots need to be torn out.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't agree with that we need to push harder, but I do think that we need to make sure that the progress that we have made doesn't get erased.
I mean,
that needs to be part of the platform.
Nobody's asking to erase the actual progress.
The idea if you talk to a leftist is that if you lean into abundance agenda, that is going to limit the power that people have been painstakingly trying to claw their way into to gain, and when you limit their power, then it allows this backsliding to happen.
I agree. I mean, systemic racism as a whole in our country, the way we're using it in this context, is against black people. But I would agree that there's certain anecdotes where systemic racism still exists. If we look at college campuses over the last year or two, Jews have been systemically oppressed by the people on the college campuses that were attacking.
Let me ask you directly. So, how in your platform would you make sure that that people are able to maintain the power they currently have?
I wouldn't. I would do individual liberalism.
Minority groups.
Individualist liberalism would say, let's get rid of that. Let's not be a group based on our race. Let's be what the American left has been.
How
in
is
the
the
past.
minority? How is the minority supposed to protect themselves? Politically, if we're not thinking about how they can organize themselves based on their minority identification or like their minority group.
What do they need protection from?
I guess a tyranny of a majority.
We have systems in government that take care of that. That's what the Electoral College is for. That's what the Senate is for. There's all sorts of different mechanisms in there. And also civil rights law, different amendments are put in place to make sure
enough.
We already have certain things in place. I would argue that they're enough, and if we were individualists, we wouldn't look at it as a racial collective based on the result.
Those systems existed since like the founding of the country, and so they existed in deeply inequitable times.
Civil rights started in the 60s and has been expanded upon with certain things like disparate impact theory out of a legal ruling from the 80s. So these things are rather new, and people are saying that they're pushing way too far in that direction based on the polling. What you're saying is we need to stay where we are and ignore the fact that the polls are saying this is going way too far.
I'm not saying we should stay where we are. I'm saying there should be a platform like that that actually addresses this issue of, okay, so we're going to step away from the far left rhetoric, but then what are we replacing that with? What are we doing to actually still protect minority groups and interests?
Nothing. Individualist liberalism as they did in the 90s, where you don't group people by a race.
Okay, but if you're saying we're going to do nothing, that doesn't inspire any confidence.
You're not even telling me what they're at harm of. It's just you're saying their rights are at harm, but I'm telling you there's a bunch of mechanisms, legal, precedent-wise in the courts to protect them. There's amendments.
But if someone is speaking to use those rights, if we're shunning people for speaking and trying to use those rights and trying to make that point,
that's illegal.
Wait, then how are you saying we're excising and excommunicating the left?
I'm saying that as a party, the Democratic Party needs to push these people out so they can win the larger group in the
mechanism?
middle.
What mechanism are we pushing people out?
You tell them, no, we're not going along with this anymore. A man's a man, a woman's a woman. We don't want to do racially grouping people. We want to go back to being individualist liberals.
Okay, so what do you do? What do you do when people don't listen to you and they do it anyway?
Well, you tell that 6% of voters bye-bye, and then you start courting the giant 40% in the middle, which is much bigger. And if you win a higher percentage of them, you win 5% of that vote. That's double the 6% based on the size of the groups, proportion of the groups. You only have to win a small fraction of this giant group in the middle in order to dwarf the votes you're losing from these people, and these people aren't going to vote for you.
I'm going to let you respond to that.
Do you think the Democrats don't understand this?
Okay.
Yes, I think Democrats don't understand
Okay,
this.
let's go to the judges real fast. We have to ask a couple questions. Kel, I know you looked excited earlier. I'll let you ask what you wanted to ask. Go ahead, and you can ask each one individually or together something here.
Okay, so I think like everyone on the left like always wants to err towards the side of being like, okay, sorry, I unmuted myself, empathetic, right, so to speak. But when you say protect themselves politically, I think that's like the root of what we're trying to get down to. It seems like there's like some invisible threat that. So you're saying like from, I guess like clarification on that is what I would ask for.
Who are you asking?
I agree. Sorry.
The threat is that if people aren't speaking up on behalf of minorities, then their interests are not considered in policy. So you can have things that work at the expense of the minority.
All right. Do you have any other questions, Kel?
No.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right, Penn.
You're muted.
You're muted, Penn.
You're still muted.
All right. I muted it. Fuck off, bro. Relax. All right. So my question is also for Ivory, just because I want to sort of reframe this conversation with him providing like the initial input. So Tyler provided like some areas that are issues for the Democrats, like the immigration stuff isn't very popular, the transgender stuff isn't very popular. If I were to just propose this to you, Ivory, what do you think has cost Democrats their political standing? And what do you think they should do to adjust? Because I think Tyler's sort of like identified the problem and a solution there. So I just want to like give you an opportunity without like trying to muddy through everything we've already talked about to just say like the Democrats are obviously in worse shape than they've been politically. They've virtually lost all their political power. And I'm not trying to say that as like let's just accept that they're not in a great spot. What do you think has got them there? And what do you propose to get them out?
So I think a big part of how things have gotten where they are has a lot to do with, I guess, technocratic governance and an idea that we're going to figure out what we're going to do, and then we're going to deliver on that. And I think that that people really need to feel like they have an input into the process, not just providing feedback on and comments about what has been decided. That they actually have a stake in what's being decided upon, and that and especially because a lot of these technocratic principles, they don't actually seem to be delivering on what they say they will deliver on. So I think we can embrace that reality by saying, okay, let's try to make sure that people actually agree with what's happening. And a big reason why people say that it doesn't deliver is because we can't be in agreement about okay, we passed this law, now we're going to implement it. We often struggle to figure out exactly how we're going to implement it, and it gets caught up in court processes and things like that. And so trying to address that ahead of time by getting more people involved on the front end rather than the back end, I think is
to kind of help your point here. It sounds kind of like you're talking about the Democrat Party has gotten away from the proactive involvement of the constituency, and this was making me think of kind of how they switched Kamala and Biden out, and just kind of it didn't really feel like the Democrat voters. It felt like they were providing a referendum on their own candidate in the election rather than a referendum on the two candidates. You know what I mean? So is that something that is within the scope of what you're identifying? Because you started talking about
yeah,
law, but
it's in the scope.
it made me think of kind of how. What do you think about the establishment? Do you think
I mean,
do
so
you want to blame them for this? Because you could.
So I mean, I don't think it's establishment versus I would.
Well, you could assume your principles are aligned.
I wouldn't focus too much on the establishment. I guess in my ideal imagining of the Democratic Party, they would have been able to really rapidly do primaries, essentially that if we're doing policy platform building in a more in a way that gets everyone involved on the front end, that kind of infrastructure would be readily usable to help people feel like they're choosing their candidate, even if it's not an official primary process.
Well, it almost, if I could real quick, it almost sounds like you're arguing on behalf of his argument, in that you're saying that, oh, it's too fractioned. If only we could have rallied together to have, gone to the primaries right away. And, you want everyone involved in it. He's arguing that it's fractioned. I'm like, is that not the same? You know what I'm saying? It sounds like you're saying that we're too fractioned, but
so
without
I think the position is, should we or should we not push away left considerations, left ideologies, left political positions? And I think the stance or the hallmark of a mature political platform is one that can integrate as many different political ideologies as possible. And so I think the biggest parts of leftist ideology are anti-monopoly, and they are anti-racist, and they are anti-inequity and anti-inequality. And it's okay, let's make sure that those people that's what they care about, anti-inequality, anti-inequity. Let's make sure that they actually feel represented in this platform, because those things are important, even if they're not important right in this very moment. They still need to be part of the platform that we're creating.
So do you think the only way that the left is going to find compromise? So you're arguing that the only way is for us to compromise at the expense of the minorities, or that's
no, I don't think it should be. Wait, at the expense of minorities?
Say the opposite of that, right? You're saying you should, just to clarify for me now, is you're saying basically that you want to push more left, while Tyler's saying we want to push more to center. Is that overall?
I don't think we need to push. I think we need to push more to center, but I think we need to do it in a way that the left feels included.
Okay. All right.
All I'm saying.
Well, all right, cool. Pin Temple, do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay.
No,
all right, I'm going to turn y'all loose again for about another 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next round of judges' questions and get to the final portion. Go ahead. Fight.
All right, so you were talking about a few different things there when you were answering questions. You were saying that the idea of that we don't have racial grouping is why we won't have minority representation. We won't have somebody fighting for the minority if we don't have minority grouping and selecting candidates based on being of the same race.
Okay, can I clarify real quick on that? So when I say we don't have people advocating on behalf of minorities. I'm more specifically saying like people that use racial groups as a lens to advocate for a specific policy. I'm not saying that we need to clump people into their racial groups, but that's one way that we can ensure that minority racial groups in particular are represented by like analyzing policy along those lines.
Yeah, so collective inclusivity based off of race to enact equity based off of diversity and
Sounds
DEI.
like you just like vomited a bunch of buzzwords. I don't
Yeah,
even
that's
know.
DEI policies that are extremely
No,
unpopular.
you didn't say anything. You just vomited buzzwords.
You could say that, but I'm describing what actually resulted from this ideology.
You didn't describe anything.
I did. I described DEI.
Okay.
I mean,
sure,
if
maybe.
you want to
I don't
listen,
know.
maybe
I
I
have
can
no
explain
idea
my
what you
point
just
a little
said.
bit more.
So
You cut me off mid-point, so if you need me to explain it a little bit more. The idea that if we don't have racial groups viewing everything through a racial equity lens, like you're saying, and then these groups won't be represented.
no, I'm
is
saying
just
that's one way to
antithetical
do
history.
so. So you
yeah,
can.
it's a bad way.
Well, hold on, let me-
I'm
go
absolutely
ahead.
certain that there's another way
It's
to
the
do this.
bad
I'm
way,
just
yes.
saying this is one way that we know works that we can do this.
It doesn't work, and it's caused more tensions.
Hold on, let me just to clarify. What do you say? Like it works. What exactly is like a proposed plan? Like, do you have a specific plan that you're proposing, Ivory?
Well, so I mean, okay, Han. If someone had a plan that they knew worked and they had evidence that it worked, that this would be the plan. So, like, I don't think that people have a plan of like what to do. I think we're all trying to figure that out. In my view, I think the way that we can do this is again by getting people to, getting people to engage in more deliberative democracy, and discuss with each other, through like structured conversations that get people to come to a consensus on issues or a near consensus on issues, and that's a way that you can advocate for minority groups by like forcing consensus to create policies, or enforcing consensus rather.
So the tyranny of the majority, because we have that process in place now. People are able to see this, and they're rejecting these things.
When you say we have that process in place, what are you referring to specifically?
Our election process, campaigning, different political activist groups, right to vote groups, drive out the
when I'm
vote
saying
group.
near consensus, I'm saying 80%.
Okay, none of this
we're
really
nowhere
tells
near
us
80%.
the general of what the Democratic Party should do. You're just saying we need to change politics, and I'm telling you, this has all been tried in the past. Yes, all this has been tried in the past.
What are you?
Hold on, let me actually get my first whole point out here for this. Like you got to talk for a good 10 minutes. They were asking questions. You said that if there's not this lens, this racial grouping, the minority groups their voices won't be heard to the degree of a diverse lens based off of racial equity.
I'm saying
But
your platform needs to.
when we had, I've considered it, and I look back into history and see that individual liberalism ended slavery, passed civil rights, and got Joe Biden massive amounts of black support over 2 black candidates in the 2020 election. He had 80% of the black vote behind him in that primary. And he was a white guy that just advocated on behalf of black people for his entire political career. You don't need to be the same skin color as somebody in order to represent them politically, and most black voters agree.
Wait, Joe Biden is a strong advocate of this kind of rhetoric, though.
He wasn't until he ran in 2020. Prior to that, he was an individualist
okay,
liberal.
that's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did. Okay, yeah.
Wait, hold on, Tyler. Let me just press you on that real quick. Did you just say that Joe Biden was like a strong advocate for the African American community? The same Joe Biden that wrote the crime bill?
Yes, and did busing. Both of those things were in support of the black community. The black community endorsed both of those majorly in polling at the time, yes.
Okay.
And that was what Joe Biden said about busing on stage when Kamala Harris tried to call him out for it. I was representing the black community who supported this by and large. I was representing the black community with my crime bill who supported it by and large. And that's why the black vote came out for him substantially, and Kamala Harris couldn't even win a single vote. Yeah, so going into the rest of the point here, the anti-racist movement is the third iteration of eye for an eye racism that we've seen in maybe the last 30 years. Affirmative action in the 70s, reverse racism in the 90s, and now we have anti-racism, which is just racial equity, which is deeply unpopular. People don't want to see different results.
Wait, so
based off
I
skin
have a
color.
question about this. So it sounds like what you're saying is like that 1950s era, or like that would spawn like the good parts of the civil rights movement, that we're ascribing that to liberalism, and then everything, and then the stuff that came after that, the bad parts we're ascribing to progressivism.
I'm prescribing racial equity policy. Yes, any kind of affirmative action, any kind of disparate impact theory, any kind of racial group where you group a bunch of people based up by their race and then use them as a political constituency. It rejects liberal individualism, which is what the party used to stand on, which is how Barack Obama won. And
but
Joe Biden won.
Isn't that like what Biden did when he was doing the bus bill? He's like saying like I'm representing the black community. So, but you were saying that was a good thing earlier.
I mean, they polled that we were in favor of it, yes, but
so,
at the end of the day, it's something that everybody
what's the
wanted.
Difference?
The difference is we're not viewing it through a racial lens, as you said. We're not worried about racial equity.
He absolutely was.
And systemic structures. No. He was doing something that at the end of the day, the majority wanted. He was representing the majority of people. When she called him out for being a racist for doing it, that's when he said the majority of black people also fit that majority that wanted me to do this.
Okay, so, but what was bad about Biden saying, like, using that kind of lens to say, like, to analyze, like, yes, this was a good thing. That was a good thing that.
It's not. There's nothing. It's not the racial equity lens.
Yeah,
that's
so
not the same
what's wrong with the
thing.
racial equity lens?
The racial equity lens is what leads to DEI, which leads to disparate outcomes. We want
you're right.
Equal opportunities.
But the racial equity lens also leads to being able to say, like, the black people supported this.
Okay, so, I mean, at the end of the day, it does, but there's other ways to come to that conclusion as well, which is one I cited by looking at the polls and saying this can't be a racist policy or isn't a racist policy if I'm representing a majority of Americans, including a majority of black Americans. You can look at demographics and how they think without being a racial equitist. I do it all the time.
Wait, okay, explain that.
You just look at the polling and say the majority. I did it with my opening in terms of defunding the police. The majority of black voters wanted equal or more funding to the police. That's not racial equity.
I mean, to me, that does sound a lot like racial
citing,
equity. Like using this group of people and identifying their minority stake, and then saying, let's consider this minority stake. Let's look at it through that lens, and then be like, let's actually care about that.
Yeah.
That sounds like the core foundation of racial equity.
I mean, it's a pillar of it, yes, but it could also be used in something else, like looking at the polls and saying what demographic wants what. That's it. Like, we don't have to have, again, racial grouping in order to have this racial collective. Individualist liberalism is what got us to these things.
Polling is literally racial grouping.
It's demographical grouping based on race, based on religion. Yes. It's not the same thing as equity. This is a Mott and Bailey argument where you're saying, equity is just grouping people up by race.
This is not Mott and Bailey.
This is. I didn't know I'd have to go into the definition of equity here. I don't know if I prepared for that because this is like.
Well, wait, hang on. What is your definition of equity? My definition of equity is like that people have like what they need in order to like have equal opportunity, basically.
Based on race, if it would be racial equity, right?
Outcomes. Is that fair to say?
Yes. So you're altering the
outcomes have nothing to do with equity.
That's what equity is.
It's about getting people what they need to have to be on the same playing field.
Then what's the difference between equity and equality then? Because I understood equality as giving everyone the same platform,
equality is
and equity being forcing and expecting the same outcomes.
Like equality is much more directly associated with outcome, whereas equity, it's somewhat associated with opportunity, but it's also just giving people what they need around the opportunities that they have.
But based on what other people have needed that are like the same skin color. Sorry, I'm not supposed to get into this space. Sorry.
Yeah, no, those are the points I was going to make as well. Like, equity is the alteration of outcomes. Equality is equal opportunity.
Do you disagree with that? Do you disagree with that?
Wait, outcomes? No, equity is not about outcomes.
It is. That's what Kamala Harris argued for.
Hold on. Why would she do? Okay, you're saying that's not true. Why is that not true?
Because equity is about the starting point. It's about getting people like. It's about saying like, if I am a fish, it's not equitable to judge me based on how well I can climb a tree, right? Like equity is about saying like, here's a proper metric in order to judge me.
No, go ahead.
That's part of it.
I was just
let's go. This is perfect time anyway.
Objective, right? So I just thought I'd read it.
We're gonna judge now anyway. It's about that time anyway to go to judges. So yeah, go ahead.
I just for the purposes of this, it says. I just asked Grok, what is the difference between equality and equity? It says equality, treating everyone the same, regardless of needs or circumstances. Equity, providing tailored support to ensure fair outcomes, accounting for individual differences. So for the
Okay, but
purposes of
fair
this
is not
discussion,
equal
we could
here.
use those definitions. Well, we could just use this distinction to make the
Sure.
So if you're talking about something that is to force or not force, but pursue a certain outcome rather than to pursue like the same footing, we can use these words. Like we just need to use them in the same
I'm
way.
fine
and
with the
this seems to
definition
be an
and
objective way to
distinction
do
that
it.
Grok proposed.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the difference between equality and equity would be equality. A Pell Grant is a good example. The Pell Grant is equity, where instead of just giving everybody a grant to go to school, regardless of how rich or poor your family is, you're only giving the Pell Grant to poor people that qualify. That would be equity. That would be redistribution. Racial equity is equity based around racial grouping. So instead of just giving poor people this, you're giving all black people this, regardless of their individual situation, because of dint of their skin color. That is the opposite of individual liberalism, and that is something that is deeply unpopular in polling.
Wait. Like how? Where does the connection between that and individual liberalism? Like, if we're talking about poor, like giving money to poor people, like that, you're still grouping people. This is not an individual thing either.
Grouping people based on their financial status doesn't group them based on their immutable characteristics.
But
that would be
what is the difference?
individual
Like,
liberalism.
why does
Being
grouping someone on their
poor
immutable
or rich does
characteristics
not
now
make
make it not liberal?
We'll let you
because
answer
it's
that, and then we're going to go to the
racial
judges.
equity.
Yeah, go ahead.
Racial equity is saying because of your skin color, not because of your particular economic situation. When you're basing equity based off of skin color, it is racial grouping. That would make it unequal.
But what about immutable
fair.
characteristics makes it different than grouping people not on an immutable characteristic when it comes to equity?
Individualism, liberalism, individual liberalism.
What
That's
about,
what these things
how does
mean.
that? What is the logic? You can't just say the words.
I've already explained this. One's an immutable characteristic based on
what
how
about
you were born.
immutable
Things you
characteristics make
can't
that the
prevent.
case?
Things you cannot prevent. Dints of your birth, being a male
Yes,
or
that's what immutable
female.
characteristic
Yes,
is, yeah.
yes, that
But
is
what
different
about that?
from
What
your
about that?
financial situation.
No, I understand it's different, but what about it? What about that makes one individualistic and the other not individualistic?
Because one of them is based off of your choices in life and how you live, and the other one's based off of your characteristics from birth that you cannot control.
All right, let me just jump in here. I'm gonna read two definitions because I didn't like the Grok ones. They weren't sufficient for me. And Penn, I'm very disappointed as you as a lawyer. You know that there's a definitive definitions that we can use. We have the Black's Law legal definition.
There's a legal definition.
Yeah,
for this?
so
All
we're
right,
gonna use the equality first. Is the quality, state, or condition of being equal, especially likeness in power or political status, and then equity, as defined by Black's Law, is fairness, impartiality, even-handed dealing. The company's policy, here's an example that gives, the company's policies require managers to use equity in dealing with subordinate employees. 2, the body of principles constituting what is fair, right, natural law. And then I guess the third one, we can go for the final one, the recourse to principles of justice to correct or supplement the law as applied to particular circumstances. The judicial
opposite of what I had said.
I think
no, it's just more technical.
Yeah,
it sounded like the opposite.
I did sound like the opposite. That's kind of why
it sounded like you were saying equity. So let's be clear. Let's put these words aside and let's get on the record, Tyler and Ivory, on whether we should, whether you prefer giving everyone equal footing to start, or whether you are pursuing and we don't reach that promised land until we have equal outcomes. Like which one is the promised land to you? Everyone has the same opportunity. Everyone is getting the same outcome.
I'll let you answer first, and then you can go to Ivory, and we'll go back to you.
I am not against equity in general. I am for the Pell Grant. I am for equity based off of decisions or factors in your life. You being in a bad situation, but able to work and seeking a job, you should receive a safety net. Absolutely. I'm left wing, and I believe the left wing should fight for those things. I am not for doing it based on the fact that you were born a certain skin color. That's the part that I don't like.
Okay, so I do want to address that, but to answer the question, obviously equality of opportunity is preferable to equality of outcome in terms of an ideological position, but that is neither equity, because it's not necessarily equality of opportunity that you're looking for. That's why the definition of equity isn't just equality of opportunity.
Is the inequality in outcome evidence of inequality in opportunity? Do you think that they're the same?
Sometimes they are, and sometimes it can be used. It can be used as a correlate.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Penn, before we go to Cal?
No.
So
All right. Go ahead, Cal.
Sorry. Ivory, you're basically arguing that the general, because minorities have typically been done wrong, or historically been done wrong in this country, that the disparity is so vast that where would you draw the line at? Because you're saying that we have to compensate because they're underrepresented and there's disparity to be made up for. So I guess where would the line be for where we even out that disparity?
So I'm not saying that there's any not a threshold. I'm not saying I've measured the disparity and this is and it's not good. What I'm saying is any political platform that I think everyone would agree with addresses how we handle the minority opinion, how we protect minority rights. And so I think it's fair that leftists are very, very concerned about minority rights. And even if those minorities are people that you don't really care about, right? It's still important to really focus on those to give a way and a platform to create a procedural mechanism within your ideology of saying this is how we're going to stand up for those rights and give them their fair shake. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to win. It just means that they need to have a fair opportunity to fight for their representation and to fight for to advocate for themselves. And however you want to determine what that fairness is, it's still the platform. I think if you did have a platform that really focused in on how do we ensure that things are fair for minorities, the left would be much more on board, and we could push the left toward the center. That, and that's my main position here, is that we don't have to push away the left in order to get politics to the center. We can pull them in.
Sure.
I
would say.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry, no, just real quick.
Sorry.
Just going
No,
back
so
to
sorry.
what I know you had rephrased it, but what you had initially said about protecting themselves politically. I guess a lot of people's pushback would be what, besides obviously being born in a shitty neighborhood or with a meth head mom or whatever the heck, what observable disadvantages in society would you say that minorities have that should be compensated for, besides like I said, low income is not racial exclusive?
I mean,
So
I don't know if
I would just
I don't
say
know if
is there any observable things that, because I feel like
I mean,
most
there
people,
absolutely are, but a really common example is if you have a name that is associated with being black, then you're less likely to get the job. All things considered equal. That's just the most common example that people bring up. But the point is even if everything was perfectly equal right now, it's still important that you have a process in place for minorities to advocate for themselves, and that that's an explicit part of your platform. And I don't think it's ceding too much to the leftists to grant them that. I think this is a good thing for both people.
Let me ask you a question if you want to expand on that, right? So I've had several bosses in my day, and two of them were named Tony and Jeff, and I couldn't pronounce their actual names, but because they were, I don't know, some random region in China is where they came from. And they basically said, we took American names because we wanted to assimilate and do something like that. And they've been very successful businessmen since then. How is that not? You bring up, if you have a name that's black, why wouldn't people do something like that? And that that they would not even need the Democratic Party.
I mean, okay. The very, I guess, simple answer is what. We're all Americans. If you people that have black names are Americans. So why is their culture inferior or subservient to, I guess, the Tonys and Johns of America?
Fair enough. All right, Penn, you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, I want to ask you really quick, just what is the scope of the word minorities as you're using it?
Literally minority, a minority group.
So
it's not about race. Race is just the example
redheads?
that people go to. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
I thought they're only 2% of the
redheads
population.
are being oppressed.
But are we talking about racial, primarily racial groups, or because
I mean, this is also talking about
black majority areas where there's certain areas where there are not minorities there. So I wanted to just sort of get like Appalachian coal miners would be like a minority group,
Sure.
right?
And then it's important to have, but I mean, like, I don't think that leftists are particularly incised for minority groups, for Appalachian coal miners. But
Well,
at least
but
online,
like when we're
anyway.
talking about minority groups, we're judging this based on like they're a national population minority.
No,
in
I
the
mean, you can
national
apply it. You
population.
can apply it locally. But the point is, you need principles that you can apply at different scales. And so I'm saying, if you want to have a principle, if you want to have part of your platform, part of your platform principles, it needs to include some kind of equity or some kind of like protecting minorities.
This sounds. Do you support the Electoral College?
I honestly like.
You said
I don't really
all the
care either
arguments
way.
that you're making sound like in line with. Which I'm a big supporter of it, obviously, but like, I feel like
Wait, Gibbs,
I agree
what
with
did
you
you
on a
say?
lot of that.
Go ahead, Cal. What was your question?
Oh, no, totally vindicated. Sorry, Gibbs was like, I don't know what the fuck you were talking about the Electoral College the other night. I'm like, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. You said you're a lawyer, right? Thank you.
Okay, whatever.
Interesting. All right, let's.
Sorry, you get it.
Any other questions? All right, well, I'll let y'all go back going. I'll let y'all go for about another 6-7 minutes, and then we're gonna do closings. Tyler went first, so you'll go first this time. But go ahead, open it up. Y'all are attacked.
Yeah, I wanted to address like what you were saying about how immutable characteristics, meaning if you don't have a choice, then equity that makes the equity or like the concept of equity a little bit different, or applying equity in that area. Like when we give Pell Grants to poor people, we're not doing so because we think, oh, you fucked up and you did this stupid thing and now you're poor. It's like you're poor because you didn't really choose to be poor. Like there's some issue here, or you did something, or you got unlucky, right? And like you took a risk that was beneficial to society, and now, society should help you out. And like again, like in that case, like it's still not the choice is not. And what people are choosing is not what is determining whether or not it's right or wrong to apply an equity framework. So, like again, I want to ask you, like, why can't this same thing be important for immutable characteristics, not just immutable ones?
Well, because it's racist, first of all, and second, it becomes a zero-sum game based off of racial groups. I'm looking at polling right now. In 2019, there was a 55% of respondents said that these types of policies were discriminatory against whites, and that number has only increased now to about 65% of people responding in polling saying these racial equity policies are discriminatory against other groups.
I mean, I'll grant you that. Like, I think the best way to talk about a lot of equity is to just say that it's straight up reparations. Like a lot of it is just ways to do reparations without directly giving people money. And honestly, I don't really think that's always that bad. Especially because, like, consider that if you have black people and they're consistently societally performing worse on IQ on like college stuff like that, right? If that is a trend we're seeing in society, like, and we also know that there's no biological reason why black people have a lower IQ. It's like that means that our society is like not as efficient as it could be. So maybe these reparations could actually help everyone. Like I think that is a much more productive way to frame the conversation. But
I'm sure you do, but if you look at the polling around reparations, which I just looked up right now, it's a 68 to 29% advantage for not giving reparations.
They're talking about like direct money transfer.
So you're just basically saying we're going to find a loophole around, and the people won't notice, but they did notice, and they don't like these things.
I think we should make it explicit. But I think when you're not talking about like just directly giving people money, that people find that more appealing.
Instances would be when Jewish and Asian people were being discriminated against in Harvard because they were having higher results on tests but being rejected for racial equity purposes because they didn't have the right skin color. Even though they had the highest merit to get into the college, they were rejected, and that would lead to the zero-sum game of racial polarization based off of what the internet dark web people used to call the hierarchy of the oppressed, or the oppression Olympics, and to that degree.
I mean, when we're talking about redistribution, it's always going to be kind of zero sum, right? Like it's not, this zero sumness doesn't go away when you're giving money to poor people.
I get that, and that's what some people don't like. And you're saying we should double down on this extremely unpopular policy because it's the right way to go. And I'm saying anyone that thinks that needs to be kicked out of the party. My
initial question was, what is the difference? Like, why are you using immutable characteristics as this like big difference between liberalism and progressivism? Like, I don't. It's not clear to me that is a good distinction, because the same issues still arise. Like you kind of counter back with, well, so now it's a zero-sum game, but there's still a zero-sum game even when you're dealing with mutable characteristics.
Because again, these are based off of individuals and their particular financial situation, and not just saying because you're black, even if you're rich, even if you're Oprah's kid, you're oppressed. And just because you're white, even if you're an Appalachian farmer in 7 of the 10 poorest counties in the country, you're actually benefiting from white society and white supremacy and the culture and all these different arguments we've heard over the years about whiteness.
But that's not the only, like, there are ways that you can frame poor, like, equity based on financial status in a way that is ridiculous, right? Like, I can frame, like, for people that gambled everything, we're going to give those people money. Like, obviously that is ridiculous and stupid, right? But exactly the same way that giving a rich black family money because they're black, like, that's also pretty stupid in terms of redistribution. So it's again, this doesn't seem to be something that is inherent to immutable versus mutable characteristics.
It is, though. That's what liberalism is immutable characteristics are part of your individual person. We don't judge people off their skin color and the content. We judge them off the content of their character.
What I'm saying is
individualism.
The same issues with equity that you're pointing out apply both to mutable and immutable characteristics. It's not like this mutability of the characteristic is not distinguishing whether or not it's good equity or not.
I understand. I'm not saying I'm against equity. I'm against using equity through the lens of race. Equity is fine.
My understanding is you're against using equity through the lens of an immutable characteristic.
Yes.
I'm gonna let you respond.
But I'm saying, like,
I'm gonna let y'all finish the
like
stage, and then we're gonna do closings. All right,
there is, and I've explained it multiple times now. It's the
liberal
principle.
Some of the explanations.
I don't think you have. I think you kind of danced around them.
Okay. All right. Well, here's what we're going to do closings. Ivory, you're up first. You got 3 minutes, and then Tyler, you're going to judges. Go ahead and send me at the end of closings. We're going to go to chat vote, and then we're going to call the judges and say who won and why. So go ahead and judges after the closings are over. I will have the. Well, you got no questions. You have to wait. There's no more questions. We have to use the information given so far. We got to wrap this up here. We got a timetable. We're trying to get these down to a certain amount of time. All right, so Ivory, whenever you're ready, you got 3 minutes.
So in closing, I think both of us want the Democratic Party to move closer to the center. I think that putting an expectation that the Democrats integrate leftists is more productive and will be more indicative of a mature policy platform, something that really represents all left-wing values and the most foundational liberal left-wing values, because we're focusing on protecting minorities and protecting minority stakes and making sure that that is a part of the conversation. Also fighting against monopoly practices and oligarchic practices. Those things are like the key tenets of progressivism and far leftism. And it's not sacrificing. We're not sacrificing something. We're not selling out by making it very explicit in our platform that those are things that are really important and really making clear how our platform is championing those things while also moving us toward the center.
All right, cool. All right, let's go to you, Tyler. Whenever you're ready, go now. You're muted.
My 3 parameters were gender theory, soft on crime, and the border. We never talked about the border. That never got discussed, as well as gender. Those things were completely left on the table, so I'm guessing those points were completely conceded. All we talked about was racial equity, which is a subset of the soft on crime issues that I actually brought up. I would say every other point I made toward the soft on crime was also left unopposed. About 90% of the argument I made in my opening was completely unopposed, and all we did was double down on a small microcosm of one of those arguments that, again, I pointed out multiple times was extremely unpopular with voters. So to say that we just need to keep moving forward with this, even though it's losing support day in and day out, Trump is actually very popular on this, and he's isolating the largest demographic of voters, which is white voters, because a majority of voters think that these racial equity policies are indeed racist and working against people through merit. Merit through individual liberalism is what people want, what people like, and until the Democratic Party gets back to that, we are going to have these problems. And from what we're seeing here, anyone that advocates for these things will not give up on them no matter what. They're going to say they're good because I say so, and we just need to keep pushing them and trying different ways to keep pushing them, even though, again, we've done affirmative action, we've done reverse racism, and now we're doing anti-racism, and they're all effectively the same thing, and all of them are unpopular. The fact that we're moving the liberal party away from liberal principles of judging people based on the content of their character and their current financial situation as individuals and grouping them up based on race is the problem. It's one of the major problems, and it's leading to disparate incomes. You see different anecdotal cases like in Florida, California, where juries are saying, yeah, this guy might be guilty, but I don't want to throw another young black man in jail. And that, to me, is scary, that we're actually not enforcing the law when people murder other people because we don't want to punish somebody based off some equitable CRT-backed theory that because more of X demographic is in jail, it means the country is at fault and not the individuals that commit the crime. We need to treat everybody. Justice is blind, and justice is blind for a reason, because we need to treat everybody fairly in order for that justice system to work. So I would argue that since about 80% of my argument was not addressed, and the parts that we're just doubling down on this extremely unpopular policy. We need to excise the people that think these things from the party, because they are not going to give up. They're just going to call you a bigot if you don't disagree. Not that he did that. He was very polite and charming and did a decent job, but at the end of the day, the ones that are doing it, you encounter them every day on Twitter, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, judges, send me who won. We're gonna let the we're gonna let the chat vote, and then we'll reveal who won after the chat vote. So yeah, now y'all can talk about whatever, but don't reveal who won, judges, or why. Just y'all can talk amongst yourselves now for a brief moment.
Happy Wednesday? Tuesday?
All right, guys, and if you are in another chat, you have to vote in mine. Chat poll is up now.
Get it handled.
It's kind of Yes, I was mean to the aspiring sandwich maker. I agree. All these women, they get too loud and uppity in here, trying to interrupt. Had to get control.
I was yapping to. I thought I was yapping to my chat, but I don't have my OBS set up so my chat can hear me when I'm muted. So I was just here yapping to the void.
Value failed me. He was supposed to be the judge. Luckily, Pentuple stepped up for Value, since Value failed.
As an individualist liberal, I actually do all the cooking.
I was going to watch it anyway.
I make a fantastic sandwich.
I'll get a crash out. It's going to be a vegetarian sandwich. I hope you guys like sprouts.
You don't need to surrender to those gender stereotypes that he's pressing on you. You're an individual, and if you want to go out and climb mountains, I make good sandwiches, so it's okay.
I mean, you don't. You look like you very feminine fella.
I'm a fucking sensei.
Yeah, you're comfortable with your sexuality.
Sensei LaRue over here? Is that who you are, Sensei LaRue?
My brother's in chat. He fucking ate my lasagna that I made for the fiance the other day. It was fantastic.
You let your family watch your fucking channel?
Yeah. I do this for fun.
I don't know. Wow. I like your little MAGA headquarters setup. This is funny.
Thank you. Yes, part of my unbiased judging.
I feel like I'm on Fox News, yeah. I'm like, let's go, Piers Morgan. I always wanted to be on Piers Morgan. Let's go.
That would be fun.
Jeb has never seen one of these. He's been hanging out with
This is how much I support women. Look at my vape. It's a purse.
Yeah. Yes. That's actually funny. How are you feeling, Ivory?
I'm chilling.
Did you enjoy your first DTS match here?
Yeah, I probably should have asked what the format was, but other than that, I think it was good.
Yeah, don't worry.
I don't want to say it live.
Yeah, there's a lot. Listen, there will be plenty more of these if you want to join in. I need more people debating all the time. I've actually had a problem getting righties on. I know what's his name. Grid was like, hey, Gibbs, bring lefties for his show. I have the opposite problem. There's only like 6 of them that want to come on.
They're scared. They're running from Ivory.
Yeah, I know.
You got me here.
Yeah,
you can press me for content.
Yeah, I'm very good at that. Yeah, it works out really well.
It's happened multiple times where Gibbs is like, let's do this thing, and I'm like, I don't want to do this thing, and he's like, we're gonna do this thing, and it's gonna be sick, and I'm like, I don't want to do this thing, and he's like, we're doing this thing, and it's gonna be sick, and I'm like,
all right, we're doing the thing.
All right, we're doing this thing, and it better be sick.
That's the exact process I used to get him to do the double Dutch rudder with me.
Hey, we gotta get the docking or whatever, going on, bro.
Yeah.
All right.
Like for the association.
It looks like the chat vote is done. This is the most lopsided chat vote we've ever had. So it was.
No, it's not.
It's not the most lopsided one.
Impartial judges,
15 to
ladies and
3.
gentlemen. Can we
Oh,
do
yeah.
it? Can we serve
15 to 3. Is that a bigger?
That's a bigger gap. It's a bigger gap.
Is it a bigger
Just
gap?
The other judge. The
15
other
to
judge
3.
not
Just saying,
also, like,
15 to 3 is a
Hawaiian
bigger
shirt
gap
demo?
than
So it's one of the biggest
12 to 1.
lopsided. But so it looks like Tyler's got the
That's
chat
the
vote. Chat. So let's go to the judges now and see if the judges are going to agree with chat or if they're going to go the opposite way. We'll start with
I'm first.
Kel.
No, start with ladies
Nope.
first.
You're going first.
I've been first the past like 2 times.
I don't give a fuck. You're going first. So go ahead and tell us who won and why.
Should I just do it? Should I just go first anyway?
No, don't do
Should
it.
you pull an insurrection on Admiral Gibbs and
you
I'll just
do
go
it.
first
Do it.
anyway?
Hey, well, you want to see something?
Oh, he's gonna say.
I will use my Tom Herman powers so that he can't pull an instruction. Go ahead, Cal. Listen, just do what I say. All right. Well, this is Kel's here does not watch very
wow.
much UFC.
Big brain move.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right.
That's a big one.
Well, I know you guys are all going to be stunned that I chose Tyler. I thought he came in a lot stronger. Ivory, I think, kind of had like a good. There was some really good parts that I liked with Ivory's argument, but ultimately, it kind of felt like it definitely felt like an internal discussion amongst Democrats with Ivory kind of representing the establishment. And this is definitely I'm an unbiased judge, certainly. But like even when we were pressing like the political processes and stuff, it seemed like Ivory was hesitant to even accept that the issue of this switching and we could just have run the primaries better. You're still kind of ignores the whole issue with the Biden scandal, which is I feel like the larger scope of that issue. So I don't know that you had as good of an answer for what to actually do for the Democrats, where Tyler had a very concrete, like, here's the problem, here's the solution. So I chose Tyler, but you made some good arguments in there. I like when we ended up supporting the Electoral College there. That was really base.
All right, Kel, who do you got? It looks like this is what's the expression in NFL? It doesn't really matter. Mr. Irrelevant, your Mrs. Irrelevant now because we got a 2-0 vote. So now yours is an irrelevant vote no matter what you say. So go ahead and tell us who you picked though.
Okay, well, I gave it to Ivory, on this one. As much as I don't think that Ivory was too successful at, like, solidifying his arguments 100% of the way, you came in here, okay, Tyler, and you were, like, relying a lot on statistics from the jump. Statistics that were pretty, like, minute at the end of the day. Like, you came in here, like, 1% equals 2.2 million voters, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was a lot of, like, Japanese, okay? Like, a lot of... And also, I gotta give it to Ivory, because Ivory had a successful derail. You said, oh, yeah, we didn't get to anything in my opening statement. Ivory, like W Ivory, bro, like successful derail. Today, yeah, like we didn't like, bro. You let him get you stuck on that, and like he argued his point better. Like you let him get you stuck on that point the entire debate. Tyler L.
All right, well,
L.
yeah, it looks like Tyler gets it 2-1 with the chat vote and Pentuple with Kel going the opposite way. But I think this was good. It was a very close, very fun one. Hopefully, you'll come back and do more of these now that you know the format. I feel like a lot of people struggle with the format the first time.
Yeah, the format is you lose if you're a leftist.
Is that what the format is? It's not even true. That's what somebody said.
It's not.
Hold on. We actually had somebody go through the data, and there was only one person that had any accusation of bias. It was this fucker.
I have lost an argument on here from
me. I don't know who you're pointing at. Oh, yeah, you're pointing at me.
Yeah, they were like, on my yeah, but I actually went back through after they said that, and I looked through the debates, and I don't see that as how that happened. One of the debates.
No,
you judged was just like the most one-sided blowout I've ever seen.
I think I stand by my unbiased judging tonight.
My first loss to Scott, I was arguing from the left, or from the right, and I lost to him, and he was arguing from the left. And then I've won a debate arguing from the left against somebody arguing to the right. So
to be fair, I texted Gibbs that you guys both lost, and he's like, "That's not an option." Okay, to be fair, I think you guys both lost.
You should add that.
It's an instant loss on the chat for being on the left.
And kinetic L's all around, bro.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, this has been fun. We're here in about what's her name? Fairy Queen never got back to me, did she? Did she say she could do it earlier? I don't know. We'll get back to there. We're going to probably start another panel here in like 40 minutes about maturity politics, talking about all sorts of wild stuff that's been going down with hypocrisy and all sorts of other good stuff. I'm pretty excited. Tyler will be there. Very quickly will be there. It's going to be a nice, small, intimate panel discussing the meaning of life. I'm pretty excited. It's either going to be 40 minutes or an hour 40 minutes from now. So thank you all for being here. We'll start. We'll give everybody outros. Tyler, you can go ahead and start.
Average debate. Enjoyer.
Sorry, I'm just kidding.
My name's Pentuple TV. I'm the head of MAGA headquarters, and for Pride Month, I am all out there shoving baseball bats up my ass.
Nice. All right. Go with Kel. Tell us what you are, who you are, what you do.
What's up? My name's Kel. I'm new to Twitch. Subscribe to my YouTube, Kinetic Kel, and no, follow me on Twitch. Yeah, that's how you say it. Yeah. And someone said in chat, first debate and her fucking last average debate enjoyer. Come on.
That's
Come
him.
on, Gibbs.
That's me.
Come on. Fuck you. Basically.
All right.
Gang,
Pentuple.
gang.
I'm the host of MAGA Headquarters, and we stream politics, poker, and baseball.
Fantastic. And Ivory Pool. Thanks for being here.
Hey, you can find me on the Ivory Fool on YouTube. Good to be here.
All right, fantastic. Thank you all so much, everybody. This ends this DCS match. We'll
Gibbs is
probably
gay. Gibbs is gay. Gibbs is gay.
We are-
Gibbs is a homosexual.
And that's beautiful for Pride Month.
It is Pride. It is Pride Month. Homo estas and all that good jazz.
Projecting onto me because he's gay.
Yeah, so we'll
Proud of
see
you
y'all.
guys.
We'll see y'all in like 40 minutes or so for the next show. Thank you all so much. Adios, muchachos. All right, and we're going to end.